Hello and welcome to The Special Relationship. I am Rachel Richardson and I am British, and this is Nicole James and she is American.
Yes, again, I still am.
Maybe being an American is worse this week than last week. I don't know.
I
How
think
are
it
you
gets
feeling?
worse every week, if I'm being honest, doesn't it? Hasn't it gotten worse exponentially every week for just about the last 10 years, if not 40 years? I mean, we can go back to Reagan if you want, which I always want to do.
Well, you think all problems start in the 80s with Reagan, and I'm
They
apt to
do.
believe you. The Special Relationship has had another very, very rough week. Trump does not like Britain, but we will gloss over that and we will jump to the state of the nation. And I was going to tell you about Saturday Night Live coming to the UK.
And I saw that and I was shocked because I feel like when you moved here and you were getting your grip on life as an American, you have always made it abundantly clear you've never thought Saturday Night Live was for 1 second funny. And I feel like I've even shown you like the super popular ones, maybe Adam Driver as the oil baron that visits the parent teacher conference, which is like one of my all-time favorite skits. And even that you're like, nah, it's not really funny. And so when I saw the promo, I was like, they're not going to like this. They're not going to like this. What are they doing? So I'm curious, what does the UK care? Are they interested? Are they going to watch? Obviously, it's going to be British. It's not going to be American stuff that they're talking about. But even just the format, like, do you and your friends care?
I'm going to say no. We do not care, but they're doing a really big job of trying to make us care. There's a lot of pre-publicity. So, Lorne Michaels, the legendary producer of Saturday Night Live, it started in like the 70s, right? He's been doing this show for decades. It was his idea to do a UK version. I have no idea why. I'm sure I feel like there's something we're missing. Because I'm not totally understanding the motivation of it all. But
I think he's actually wanted to come to the UK for a very long time, if I'm not mistaken. I think.
Yeah, maybe he just wants to, be able to pop across the Atlantic.
And it was just the 50th year, the 50th anniversary. It could just be like, maybe we've proven the model. It's time to expand.
After 50 years. So it's going to be very, very similar in terms of the format, like all the pieces of it, including things like Weekend Update. It has that same ensemble cast of characters. And much like the American version, these are like unknowns, although these people do have like social presence and have like a, they're up and coming comedians, that they haven't just dragged these people in from the street, but they're just, at the beginnings of their careers and their fame. And I guess the idea is that they want to try and create superstars like, the American version has, any comedian you want to think of in America probably started at Saturday Night Live. I'm guessing what Sky, it's going to be on a channel called Sky. And I'm guessing what they're thinking is that they might be able to improve their social presence from the show, because that's the only reason I would think you do this in 2026. Because
Totally.
The one thing that's been interesting, as you say, 50 years of Saturday Night Live, is they have managed to keep it fresh and current, because I wake up on a Sunday morning and all I see on my social feeds are these little vignettes, these sketches, and of course they're 2 to 3 minutes. They're like perfect social video size. There's nearly always like, a smattering of celebrity in there. They're talking about, issues that are hot and current.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the play, because I don't know who is going to be watching at like 10:30 on a Saturday night on a TV channel that you have to have a subscription. It's like cable. It's like
interesting. Yeah.
maybe our version of HBO. Like you have to pay to access this Sky channel. And so I just can't imagine there's going to be that big an audience. And I think they're thinking it's going to be this huge social hit. But I guess we'll find out.
I'm so curious. Yeah, you have to let me know, because I'm imagining it fizzling out, unfortunately, for Lorne. But I think he has plenty of success here.
They've brought in the big guns. Tina Fey is going to present the first episode, which is like, okay, great, Tina Fey, like Hollywood star, like most British people would think of her as. But I don't think that's, again, going to get people to tune in. She's not box office in Britain. I love Tina Fey, but she's not box office.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised they didn't get a British person to do it.
They've got Jamie Dornan, who is Irish, doing it the week after. They have, I think that's all they've announced. But
who's as funny as a doorknob,
He's not funny. Very, very
not
hot.
Funny.
Not
so
funny.
Hot. Zero funny.
Extremely hot. Extremely hot.
Yeah.
You wanted to ask me a question about GLP-1 drugs, I understand.
Yes. Are you, because I know that you guys can't show pharmaceutical ads on TV. Is that right?
We can advertise like services where you might be able to get treatment. So like, I don't know, like fat loss clinic can do an
Okay.
advert. Our equivalent of Tylenol can do an advert. But like what we do not do is like advertise cancer drugs because you don't have any influence over your ability to get those. That's all dealt with by the
Hello. I
doctor.
like drink raw milk and read Tradwives, so I know how to cure my body of cancer. Hello? No, I was going to say because I cannot walk 2 feet in any direction without running face first into a fucking GLP-1 ad on my TikTok, on YouTube, on regular TV. Outside, I feel like every single place that I go, it's like it's either Row, which is like the Serena Williams one,
Oh, yeah.
it's Hers, which is another mail order one, or it's the actual ads for Ozempic and Zepbound and Mounjaro. And every fucking where I go, they're like, please take this, please, please, please take this. And to the point where I'm like, should I take this? Like, it's so insulting. Not insulting calling anyone fat. It's insulting that you would shove anything like this down anyone's throat this much. It's just unbearable. And never mind all of the body image stuff and et cetera, that's like ravaging Hollywood. Like we just had the Oscars and I couldn't believe the way some people looked and how, there's no room for us to say anything about anyone's body because you never really know what's going on. Meanwhile, Catherine O'Hara, we find out, who just died a few weeks ago, she had cancer. The last fucking award show she was at, she was super thin, likely because she was sick, allegedly. And everyone said she looked great. And it's like she literally was dying. And so now there's all these, it's just overwhelming. And as someone who lived through the mid 2000s of the Lindsay Lohans and Nicole Richies of the world, I literally remember a cover of a magazine that said 98 pounds, thinking I have to be 98 pounds. I'm just like, I can't believe these ads I cannot get away from them. I'm like going to start dreaming about them. They're fucking everywhere.
Wow. That is not a British experience, I'm going to say. Unless these things are being like really mega targeted to people and I'm just not getting them.
Could be me.
Which then is deeply insulting to you. I am sorry to tell you that, but like I'm not getting the same thing. But it is different here. There are like a handful of companies where you can get these things, but they do have to be signed off by a doctor.
I think the same is true here. Even if you go to a weight loss clinic or whatever, there is a doctor on staff who will address you and address your vitals, etc., and decide from there. But the idea is they're a bit more lax maybe than your general practitioner, and because you're paying out of pocket, you're not going through insurance, it doesn't really matter if you really fit the qualifications. I think also, I don't think the show has really made it across the pond yet, but Secret Lives of Mormon Wives is trending right now because the new season just dropped and there's a girl on that season who's been abusing GLP-1s, and it was just announced that she's quitting them and going to rehab. I mean, you've never seen a skinnier person in your life.
You can get addicted to them?
You're like
overusing.
Overusing. She just is like super injecting herself all the time. So she's like not eating at all. And I'm not at this episode yet in my binge, but I think that there's an episode about her addressing that and how she's sort of abusing them. But it's just, I was just thinking about how you guys are another way in which you're lucky if you can avoid these fucking ads, because it's just crazy. It's just crazy.
What is so fascinating, and we have touched on this in previous episodes about like the NHS system, is they are talking about having it more widely available on the NHS. So currently, a certain group of people, I think you have to be quite extremely obese, are able to access it through the health system that we have. And I think that, they're talking about trying to figure out how you lower that. So there's obviously like more mass health benefits, because obesity obviously does have so many impacts on so many other areas of health. But that is a huge health question, but also a huge political question, because of course, that will cost an awful lot of money, because if you were to treat every single person who's overweight in Britain, I mean, that would be an alarming amount of prescriptions and an alarming amount of those drugs. So it is becoming quite a sort of fascinating sort of political issue, which they've kind of kicked the can down the road, I think, because it is quite complex and they quite frankly probably don't have enough money to fund it. But that could be like a really fascinating reality.
Yeah.
Also, if the NHS were to do it on such a wide scale, they'd have to be more certain about its efficacy and its long-term impact.
Yeah.
Can you
And we don't
imagine if they
really
just
have those yet.
if the NHS just start willy-nilly handing it around, then and we
Yeah.
find
What are you
out
guys,
suddenly
America? No.
can you imagine? I know, yeah, we all suddenly find out like it gives people an increased risk of heart attack or something, then yeah, this would be bad.
Yeah.
I'm going to tune myself in and see if I start seeing it more, but it's definitely not overwhelming
I'm
here at
I'm
all.
gonna take a screenshot of every single time on my phone during one day that I see a GLP-1 ad.
Ooh, I
And
like
I'm on my
that.
phone a lot, so
I
it'll be a
like
lot.
that. I like that. Okay, I have a question for you. I would like to know, please explain to me why America is so unique in its tipping culture.
Yeah, so and you guys are pretty confused by this a lot, I take it. I
Yes,
remember, again, when you moved here, it's just like, when do you tip? How much? Where? Is it insulting? Is it insulting if I don't? Is it illegal if I don't? Is that a proper
correct.
response? Yeah.
It's the word I would use is bamboozling. We don't know who we should give it to. We don't know how much we should give them. We don't know like what happens if we don't. It's so I feel like when I first got to the States, I was living in perpetual terror of offending somebody. So I was just giving money to everybody. Maybe I was insulting people because I was just handing money out left, right, and center. And I was just like, oh my God, like I just don't obviously want to be in a situation where they feel like I'm not doing the right thing. And then after years of living there, I'm much more selective now about who I give cash to. But I have a golden 20% rule when I'm in the States.
Very good.
I hope that makes me a good tipper. I have heard that I should be giving personal service people 30, which I
What's
am not
personal
doing.
service?
Like someone who's like touching your body, like a masseuse or a
Oh, I've
hairdresser
never
or
heard this
like
in
a
my life.
facialist. Maybe that's a misinformation. For
Yeah.
context, in the UK, in bars and restaurants, it's like a 10% situation. I think
Bars
some
and
people
restaurants pretty much only?
yes, and taxis. It is creeping up, I think. I think we're being a little bit Americanized, but I'm going to say because we do this disclaimer every week, we're two white ladies and we like to talk about our countries like we're representing everybody. My take on this is that most people in Britain, if they are going to tip, loads of people don't tip, but if they are going to tip in a restaurant, it's like a 10% situation. So on that
Yeah.
bombshell, please tell me about the American confusing system.
So I would say the standard place where you're going to tip, pretty much everybody knows to tip is at a sit down meal. You are etiquette experts say the standard tip for that is 20%. I found a study where it said 57% of Americans tip 15% or less at a sit down meal. So I would say the range is between 15 to 25%. And this is every single sit down meal that you're going to go to. Why we do this? Of course. Where does it all go back to in America? Slavery, of course. I did not know this, but of course, I feel like if there's ever a question, why does America ... It's slavery and it's racism, and that's like sort of why we do everything. So essentially, after the Civil War, when we're in Reconstruction, slaves are newly freed. However, not a lot of people are welcoming them into their workplaces. There's not a lot of jobs for them. So they end up if they don't end up as sharecroppers, a lot of them end up in more menial positions, servants, waiters, barbers, porters on the railroad. Many of those corporations said, we're not going to pay these people, and instead relied on customers and guests to tip these people very small cash tips that they would then be able to keep. Although I'm sure some of the corporations would take some percentage of that as well. So that's sort of where the custom started. And I think where we're at now is in a really, really weird position, because I think another study I found, a third of Americans, this is as of 2023, think tipping has gotten out of control, which is resulting in lower tips, because we're at a point, and I always think that I started to really notice this after COVID, when restaurants who were never delivery before had to adapt and became delivery or became pickup or whatever, they would add a tipping option when you were checking out, and suddenly we were tipping everybody. There has always been a tip jar at like the baristas, from Starbucks to like a local coffee shop. You know, if you want to leave $1 or $2 after, someone makes your latte, that's kind of always existed. But it's now, I don't know, you walk into like a shipping store and you're like, can you put this in a box for me? It's all wrapped. I just need you as the person with the ability to print out the label that goes to USPS. Can you please do that for me? That's what your job is. And then it's like, would you like to leave a tip? No, actually, I don't want to leave a tip for that. And there's been so much fodder and conversation about, now I think even Americans are confused. Like, where do we tip and how much? And what if I don't? You go to like a soft serve place, like a yogurt place. There never used to be an option for a tip. There was always, again, like a tip jar on the counter, but that was for people who went like above and beyond. I mean, customers who went above and beyond and thought like, I really want to be generous today. I'm going to throw in a couple bucks. But now it's pretty much almost every time you interact with a cash register, they're asking if you want a tip.
The iPad that flips.
Yes.
That's when you're in trouble. That's when you know
That's
you're
when
in trouble.
And some of the pre-made percentages, I've seen 35%. I'm like, I'm not paying you a third of what I just paid for this Caesar salad wrap that I picked up from the freezer that you're checking me out on. Like, I would do it myself if if that was an option. But I think, like so many things in America, this should be a job for the corporations. This should be a job for the companies to pay people a living wage, to pay people better wages. So it's not up to the customer and the guest to subsidize what should be, a salary from the employer. We'll see this a lot in Chicago. If you go to certain restaurants, and because it's a bit more of a progressive city, you go to certain restaurants and it'll say on the receipt, we've added a 15% gratuity because we pay for healthcare for our workers. And the amount of fodder that happens on the Chicago subreddit about people being furious, or it's not even 15%. I think it's 3%. I wildly overestimated that. Usually it says like, we've added a 2 or 3%, thing,
wellness
whatever,
charge.
for
I've heard
healthcare.
it
Yeah, whatever.
be called so many things, like
And it's like,
wellness surcharge.
it's like, also like, maybe you guys should eat the cost of that restaurant, but also there's such small margins in restaurants, so I sort of get it and whatever. But people get furious. Like, I don't want to pay for this. Why is this my responsibility? And to a certain extent, they're right. But also, this is a job for the federal government. There are places, we have something called tipped employees in the country. That's like the way certain workers are categorized. If you're a tipped employee in certain states, they can pay you as little as $2.13 an hour because...
Wait, what?
Yes. Well, first of all, our federal minimum wage is $7.25, which is criminal in and of itself.
Yeah,
I remember...
For the Brits, that's £5, roughly £5 is your minimum wage.
Is the minimum wage.
Wow.
So you have to be paid that based on, according to the federal government. States, all the states have different minimum wages. I want to say Illinois is $15 maybe, but there are some states in the country, I think Arkansas is one of them, where if you're a tipped employee, your actual federal minimum wage, so meaning what the restaurant most likely has to pay you, is $2.13, because they know that you will make up a lot of that in tips from customers. So it's just a huge quagmire, and I get why you guys are confused. It's also, I remember I was going to bring this up when you and I were both living in LA. We were seeing the same gynecologist. She was like a celebrity gynecologist, which like only in LA.
She delivered a Destiny's Child baby. So,
she delivered a Destiny's Child baby. She delivered Ashley Simpson's baby. She was a very important gynecologist, but she started, and this is sort of separate from tipping, but a little bit tangentially related. She started what was essentially a subscription model where if you wanted to continue seeing her, you would have to pay a yearly fee of I think it was $200 just to be able to book an appointment with her. So never mind what your insurance qualified for, never mind any of that. just to be on the list to be able to go to her office, you had to pay a yearly fee. And I think at that point we were moving or I had found someone else. I said, I'm fucking out. That's crazy. But it really has, I think, I'm surprised that number was as low as it was. Only a third of Americans think the tipping has gotten out of control because I feel like everyone I talk to is like fed up
Yeah.
with every single register having a
Yeah.
tipping, some kind of tip on it.
I think you're so right about COVID being the tipping point, but it was funny that that also coincided with the iPadization of like the
Yeah.
square system or whatever. But this was always my fear about the workers. I think I very quickly understood that the reason I had to tip generously in America was this idea that the person serving me was not getting paid. And I think I'd read a couple of things. And again, it's like, I don't know how much this is true. And it definitely does differ from state to state. But I'd heard things like there's bars in New York where the staff have to pay to do the shift, but they get to keep the tips. And that I kind of had some understanding that like most like waitresses, busboys, like the kind of like, the manual workers in a restaurant, that they were essentially either not getting paid or getting paid so little that your tips were like so important. So it sounds like if you're in like California or New York, maybe you are getting like not in those places, but like an okay-ish minimum wage. And the tips like just bump you up and get you to like a sort of living wage or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think I thought they weren't kind of getting anything. Like that my tip was like so essential. So like
Well,
I would
$2.13 is basically nothing.
Yeah, I mean it is nothing.
If
It
you
is
work 8
nothing.
hours, it's like 16, 17 bucks.
But not in like a big city like New York or LA, right?
No,
They're
so
getting
there's
like
certain states, there's
$50
certain states
or something.
who have gotten rid of the tipped employee notation. Like that doesn't exist in certain states. The more progressive states, that's illegal.
Yeah.
But some states obviously still have that.
Okay. What about like delivery people and like taxi drivers, hotel
Yeah.
staff? Give me a kind of rundown of who you're giving the cash to.
Yeah, you're giving all of these people money. You're
Okay.
giving all of these people money. Pretty much any sort of, service worker, outside of like a retail employee or some other kind of maybe hourly worker that isn't directly doing a service for you, pretty much tipping all of those people. It's not always 20%. I think it should be. Sometimes I'll only tip an Uber driver 15%, and I do feel bad about that, but I am quite poor at the moment. Obviously, still spending enough money to take an Uber, which is stupid, but sometimes I'll only tip 15% on that. I do feel bad about that. Delivery drivers, if we're doing DoorDash or whatever, like we try to tip 20% every single time, we're interacting with anyone who's like, again, doing a service for us. I thought the standard was the same for, your hairstylist and, facialist, all that stuff. I also thought it was 20%, but you're now saying you've heard of 30%. I've heard of 25% for them for sure.
No, I feel like it's just these apocryphal tales and like people there's obviously no rules. And so I just think people make stuff up. So I've never really known. And I've always tried to err on the side of caution. One thing that I've never quite understood is whether I should be leaving money for the cleaner, or the housekeeper in the hotel room when I leave.
Yeah, you're supposed to tip them as well. I don't
How
know.
much should I leave?
I don't know, actually.
$10?
God, coming out as like a horrible person. I feel like we always just like whatever's in our wallet.
Right.
We'll tend to
But like
leave.
$100, right?
No, I mean maybe some rich people do, but just
Right.
a few bucks. But the other thing is so many people do not tip. So many people do not tip. And I'm now, I interface with this all the time because I work at a makeup store that has a salon in it. So when they're done getting their service, they come to the front and I ring them out. You would be shocked at the amount of people who, they'll get an eyebrow wax, they'll get, which is, $35 or whatever. So anywhere from $35 to, there are people who've come up. There was a woman, I think I told you about this because I was so shocked. There was a woman who got like a double process, so like a two-tone blonde, haircut, etc. I think all of her hair services was somewhere in the $600, $700 realm. $0 tip.
And that,
$0
was
tip.
she the talk of the place?
No, because that's the thing. It's like the way that this place works is you get your tips at the end of your shifts and then you come up to the register. And so you don't even know because you don't get rung out at the salon. You get rung out at the front. So you don't even know what these people are tipping. She could have tipped in cash to the stylist and I didn't know about that. But if you come there a lot, we always ask when we ring you up at the front, do you want to add a tip? Like there's a place in the series of events on the register specifically to enter a tip. But so many people just say, oh, no tip.
So give me a percentage, would you say? Like 50-50?
You're asking how many people do not tip?
Correct.
40% of people, 35% of people do not tip.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
And so I don't know if that expands out into, this is a franchise store that there was many, many all over the country. I don't know if this is also true at like nicer salons. Sometimes I think it's even more true at those places because I feel like some of the richest people are some of the cheapest motherfuckers you'll ever meet. It's like unbelievable. I would say the general advice for someone visiting America for the first time, if there's a line on your receipt or at the register to tip, if you're in the 15 to 20% range, that's perfectly status quo. No one's going to run after you. No one's going to, there's certain things that I think, again, we're still getting our heads around in terms of what are we tipping on now? Like, am I really tipping? Like, there's a market at the corner, sort of like millennial market. They make lattes and stuff, but then they also have like coolers of food. And it's like, if I go pick up, a piece of a sushi hand roll and you're ringing me up and you turn around the iPad, I'm hitting 0 and I'm not feeling bad about it
because you're not getting served. You're just
yeah. And I have to interact with you to leave. It's like me going to buy a shirt or me going to buy like at Walgreens to go get, face masks or like some Tylenol or something. No offense, you didn't do anything. Like you rung me up, which is which is what you're getting paid for. And so I think, but if, you're carefully mixing my drink or whatever, like I understand tipping that. But yeah, I think Americans are really confused. But I think in general, 20% across the board, you're not going to get in trouble and your servers will think that you're a generous person.
And then $1 a drink at a bar? Or are we getting into that 15-20% range? Like if you're at the bar and you're asking for the drinks
and
then
you have
get
dollars. I always still do $1 a drink.
Yeah.
And even cocktails now are like fucking $18. I'll just add $1 because I'm like, this is not my fault that the cocktail's $18. Maybe people do more, but I also am so bad at math. So I'm like, I don't know what 15% is. Here's $1, like, here you go.
Do Americans know that this is quite unique to their culture?
No, because I don't think we know. I don't think we're introspective at all. So I think what they think, what we think when we go to Europe or we go, hey, we don't got a tip here. That's what we think.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're teeing me up. I got to tell you about the worst thing I've ever seen an American do in a foreign country.
Yeah.
I am in Rome. We go to a gelato place. And an American woman who I have to say was exhibiting all of the American tourism symbols.
The worst.
She was very loud and like in this person's face and speaking very loudly in English. And she ordered some gelatos and it cannot have cost more than $20, right? What she got. And she was trying to give them $20 as a tip. And the guy behind the counter, because in some European countries, like I can't speak for this from an English perspective because in big cities, I think most people would just take the tip and think, wow, generous person. There are some places in Britain that would reject the tip out of like honor. In France and in Italy, there is definitely a sort of idea that it's unbecoming to take the tip. Like they sort of see it as like they're being bribed or something. Like it's just too much. She was trying to force a €20 note to this server and he had to like literally did the J-Lo hand and was like, no, we do not need that. We will not take that. And she was like, I don't know what to do with you people. And then turned on her heel and walked out.
My God.
And it was possibly one of the worst things I've ever seen.
You're like, thank God I'm British.
Well, I mean, we do not necessarily conduct ourselves that well abroad. But I was
But I
like,
think you're
wow.
more adept at general European culture than we are. And I think, yeah, if someone turns down an American custom or an Americanism, we get very, very upset.
She was offended that he
Yeah.
wouldn't take the money, which was
Yeah.
wild to me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I feel like if Americans though came to Britain with their like 20% rule, like the British servers would be really happy about it.
They'd
They'd
love
be
it. They wouldn't
oh
they
yeah.
wouldn't like turn it down.
I mean, look, if you went to like somewhere incredibly like a really small little place, it would be seen to just be weird and flash and like you're showing off. You know, if you were just like throwing money at people, but like I think if you're in a big city in London, like yeah, those staff are going to be like really happy
If
with the tip.
you're going to a sit-down meal in London, you're
Mhm.
tipping 10%?
Okay, so often in if you it's really got to do with levels of fanciness, right?
Mm,
If you are going to a really nice restaurant in Mayfair, they will add on the tip like as a line item, but it will always generally always be suggested. There will be some places that will like force it on, but generally speaking it's suggested and you can ask to have it taken off, but like you really are making a scene by doing that. They will do it. I've never seen anything more than 20% in a very,
okay.
very fancy place in the UK. I'd say for more regular places, it's 10, maybe creeping up to 15. Like I'd say 10 is like you sort of, you know, your communal garden, nice sit down restaurant. 20% is your sort of Michelin star. And then so many other restaurants wouldn't actually even have a line item for
Well,
gratuity.
yeah.
And then you can ask, like, so when they bring the card machine over, you could say, can I add a tip? And sometimes it'll be an option on like the card machine, or you can leave cash or whatever. But like a lot of people will go to like a mid-range restaurant and maybe not even leave a tip. It's definitely not customary to tip in pubs. You might buy, if you're a regular, you might buy the bar staff a drink and they can either have
Okay.
that drink or like take them, like some, like where I worked, you were allowed to take like £1 for like in lieu of the drink and you could take that as money. I mean, that was a very long time ago. Yeah. And taxis don't expect, well, it actually in black cabs now, it comes up as like suggested gratuity. And most people do tip taxi drivers. I would say most people will tip Uber drivers. I don't feel Brits tip delivery drivers enough.
Mhm.
I feel very, very sorry for delivery drivers, like just from reading some horror stories about like how DoorDash operates and how they get so crushed by like these stupid, you know, apps that decide how desperate they are for a shift and how much they get paid and how they
Yeah,
basically don't get paid
God.
anything. So I try as one woman to like write the system and I'm like, have £5 for bringing me my McDonald's when I'm hungover.
Yeah.
I don't think that's that common. I think people might give like £1 or £2. And then hairdressers. I'd say like hairdressers and beauty services people will
Mm.
tip. Really, that's it. I'm going to say. Please tell us though.
Okay.
We might have this completely wrong. So if we have this if we're representing our countries wrong, please tell us. If we get this wrong, stick it in the comments. But I'm going to say that that's how it is.
All right. Well, that's because you guys also, no matter wherever you're being a waiter or a waitress or a server, you can still go to the doctor. So you had it right. The customers are subsidizing a more, fuller lifestyle for our service workers because the employers won't do it. So, which is like, you're like, okay, then why don't we just all pay a little bit more in taxes so we can all go to the doctor? It's like we crowdfund everything, but we are against, paying a little bit more. Anyways, I get off my soapbox.
Every single subject comes back to healthcare and slavery. This is
I
what we have
mean,
discovered.
it's true. And workers' rights, of course, the pro-labor movement, which we're desperately in need of. Anyways, any more questions on tipping?
I think that's me. Next, we're going to move on to a very British, unique part of our culture. When we were trying to figure out what this episode was, we were figuring out what the counterbalance was to tipping. And I am going to explain to you the very British pastime of queuing and how it is so much a part of our culture.
Queue, one of the best words.
As you would say, wait in line.
Yes. Or online if you're on the East Coast. They say online, which drives me nuts.
That doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense at all.
I was online. I'm like, no, that's not what it is.
You were telling me that Americans don't understand that we love to queue and that we
Yeah,
find
I would say
queuing-
that's not something that Americans immediately think of when they think of,
Huh.
going to England. And
Okay.
even when I was there, I don't know that I really noticed it. But tell me more because I'd love to go back and need to know everything I need to know.
Queuing is not necessarily unique to Britain, but our reverence for it is. We love queuing and we take queuing extremely seriously.
Uh-huh.
We queue for buses, not in London, but outside of London, you queue for buses. You queue to get into a store before you get in. Even in pubs, there's like an informal queuing system. Like, oh, they were before me. Like, you sort of all figure out who's next. And like, you sort of go in that sort of system. Famously, the Wimbledon queue, do you know about that? Where like people
No.
desperately want to go to Wimbledon, like will camp overnight and then wait in a gigantic queue to be able to get into Wimbledon. That's like a very famous queue that lasts for 2 weeks. Do you know about the gigantic queue that also went on for days on end? People were camping out overnight in a queue to see the Queen lying in state.
Feel like I did hear about that. Yeah. But
I mean,
I guess I
that was
thought like
wild.
we would do the same thing. If there's a president lying in state, we would line up. I don't think it's a mad
Okay.
rush.
Okay.
There's certain things we line up for too.
Okay. Well, let's see whether this is different in America. It is a social crime to jump the queue. Like,
Yeah.
you are not a proper, fair, or decent human being if you are a queue jumper. And if I were to find out that I had the reputation of being a queue jumper, I may as well just end it all. I mean, it is like death to you if you're known as a queue jumper. It is just so unacceptable. And I have 2 examples of this that will help explain this story. One is that David Beckham, who is considered a national treasure, I'm going to say, but he elevated his national treasure status by 5,000% because he did wait in a queue overnight to see the Queen lying in state.
Wow.
And
he like camped out.
He could have used his connections.
Right.
People would have offered, hey, David, come and stand by me. Like, he didn't have to do that. But it is something so deep in the British psyche that we're like, no, this is my place in the queue. And like, I will just suffer along. And that I'm number 17 in the queue. So therefore, I will be seen 17th.
Keep calm and queue on.
Exactly. I like it. We should make t-shirts. Now, at that same event, 2 big TV personalities, their fall from grace started because they skipped the queue to see the Queen lying in state. Okay. Our equivalent of somewhere between the Today Show and The View is a show called This Morning.
I thought you were going to say Loose Women.
Well, sorry, but I was giving you the American shows. But yeah, Loose Women is our version of The View. So Holly and Phil present This Morning.
Mm-hmm.
And every year they used to win this national TV award for being like the favorite daytime TV presenters. But it always belied the fact that they were never actually that popular. Like, most people I know didn't really like watching them on TV. So it was always a bit weird that they sort of had this status, but everyone was like, oh, Holly and Phil, they're so annoying. Well, it just needed one moment to unleash the torrent of hatred for Holly and Phil because they were seen to skip the queue. They were seen coming in a side door. They see the Queen lying in state, and then they sort of come out and they film this tiny little clip. And then this like whole sequence of events is never even shown on the TV program, right? So everyone starts asking questions like, why were Holly and Phil there? Why did they skip the queue? And literally it was like a 2-week news cycle of them jumping the queue and sort of abusing their position to get ahead of this 2-day long wait.
Wow.
And it really does cut to Britain's sense of like fairness and what's proper. And you can see it in so many aspects of life. Like, this is the same rationale people have for why they hate like people coming across in boats, like the sort of current refugee crisis that we have.
Yeah.
Well, if they came another way and then they filled out the forms and they got here, well, that's like the fair way of doing it. But they're skipping the queue.
Jumping the line. Right.
Exactly. Right. There's something, I mean, there's racism and all sorts of issues wrapped up in all of this, and big social issues and integration issues. I mean, that's a whole other episode. But I would say that the thing that gets people's like goat the most is this sense of queue jumping, like not following the procedures, not doing what is expected of you. Like, there is a way to get there. It is very, 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 very different.
It's so different here. I mean, I think we have lines of, we don't really line up for the bus. They do that in New York. And growing up in Chicago, I remember moving to New York thinking, why the fuck are these people lining up? This makes no sense. But then I flipped it. I'm like, no, we should actually all be lining up, because if you got here first, you should get on the bus first. Hello. But there's lines at Disney World. There's lines, in many, many places. If you're waiting in line for concert tickets, which people don't do anymore, never mind like the Ticketmaster debacle, like every time you're trying to get tickets online. But even that made me think when you were talking about skipping the line at Disneyland now, there are passes you can buy that will skip the line for you. You pay to skip the line. And even, this always pisses me off when we go to see a movie. We go to the AMC like near our house. There's an AMC Stubs Club, which is like you can pay a monthly subscription fee to, I don't know, see more movies or like get perks on your food or whatever. They have a separate fucking line for the AMC Stubs people. And I'm like, okay, so tell me this. If there's one box of Junior Mints left and I want them, and I've been in line. I've been in line for 5 minutes with the regular people, but the AMC Stubs guy comes up and he gets the last box of Junior Mints just because there's no one in line. Fuck you. That's fucked up. You're paying for the privilege. And I fucking hate that. But then I'm thinking about your Queen lying in state situation. There's no way any of our senators or politicians or whoever is going to see the next dead president, hopefully Trump, like there's no way they're waiting in line. They're all coming in through the side door. There's just no fucking way. The only way they would wait in line is if it was on camera being filmed so they could be seen as a person of the people. Nobody
Correct.
fucking waits in line here. Like
Correct.
the whole, I feel like America's like motto is like pay to not wait in line. It's like how, you can pay your way out of any situation here. So admire that. I have a newfound respect for David Beckham. I really admire that he did that.
Honestly, it was a PR coup what he did. Now, what would happen in America if there was a queue? Let's just say I'm queuing up to get into a theater or something. If someone skipped the line, what would happen?
Totally depends on where you are. I would say, for example, in places like New York, they're mouthy there. So they would say, hey, what the fuck are you doing? The line starts back there. Get back in line. In Chicago, people are a little bit nicer. I see this all the time. Again, at work, we have a huge, like at the cash wrap, there's like a huge line all the time. You have to enter a certain way, but the way it's set up, it looks like you can enter from the front. And people do all the time. They know the line's fucking there, but they're like, oh, I didn't see it. And so they act completely oblivious, and very rarely does anyone say the line's back there. And us as the cashier, if we see them starting to, meander about, we'll say the end of the line's actually over there. But if they just come straight up to the cash register with their stuff, we're not going to say, oh, go get in line. Like I'll get in trouble if I do that. You know what I mean? But I think totally depending on where you are and what the event is, like if you're just lining up for like, I don't know, a casual like bakery on a Sunday morning or something, people might say it's okay, you could go ahead of me, it's no big deal. But if it's, really crowded or the tickets are expensive or, tensions are high for some reason, people would say something to you, I think.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
in Britain, 9 times out of 10, the whole queue will turn on the queue jumper.
I love that.
It's like mob rule. Like if it's
God.
very clearly established that there has been a queue transgression, the queue will react and it
Does
will
this
be like
exist?
mob justice.
Someone needs to make a YouTube compilation of people trying to jump lines and British people just yelling at them. I would
Okay.
watch that for hours.
I'm gonna try and find you some evidence.
This is the exact kind of like daily revenge, small daily revenge that like fuels my insides.
But I'm gonna say that it happens so rarely because of this social consequence.
Because people know not to do it.
I would never do it because I would be so scared of like there being a situation.
But
like I actually nearly did get into a fight at a Beyonce concert because someone cut the line.
What happened?
It's a very, very long story, but this guy like got hold of this girl's hand and like kind of pulled her into the toilets. Like she was like a sort of innocent victim, like tottering around behind
They're
him.
always lying. They're always acting oblivious, and they know there's a fucking line.
Yeah, he was essentially like, I need to go, and so she needs to go to the toilet before I need to go type scenario. And so like it was this like odd dynamic because it was kind of like two of them and it was a guy, but this is not my usual behavior, but like I had to go with this guy. I would never normally do that because I would normally be too scared. But I was just
Were you
like,
drunk?
I had a few drinks. But if I'm honest, it was more like Beyonce had like pumped me up because it was at the end. It was at the end of a Beyonce concert, so I was at the peak of my powers. So I was just like, let's go. And I was just like, what are you doing? There's a line.
Who the fuck do you think you are?
Yeah. And then I was like, I was like, that was not my usual behavior. But like all of us were like, what? Like, we all banded together. All the girls were like in agreement. This was terrible behavior.
I would have been right on his ass along
Yeah.
with you. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Did you not see the line? Yeah. It depends. And again, the situation, are people drunk, etc. I think then more people are like, hey, wait a minute, this isn't fair. But I think there's this sense to Americans too. Again, I said everything goes back to slavery and workers' rights, also guns. So I do think sometimes you don't want to.
What's the gun angle here?
The gun angle is if this person's fucking crazy and I say something to them about skipping the line, I don't know what the fuck they're going to do to me. There's always a sense of, just an undercurrent of danger and violence constantly, seeping through American culture. So I think like if I'm in Florida when I go to visit James's family, I'm not talking to, and we're in the line at Publix to get a sub. If you look to that line looking the way certain people do in Florida, I'm not saying a goddamn thing because that's an open carry state and that's a stand your ground state. You can go ahead and jump the line. You know what I mean?
I understand. I think that's a very, very, very good decision. We do not have that. I mean, we do have some problems with knife crime and just like general crazies. But yeah, you're right. If someone like is crazy or like looks violent or I don't know, is just acting aggressively, you're off from Florida. You're not going. Okay, you're not going to do that. But like, if it was, and you know what's really bad is like when the cue turns on someone and they have made an innocent mistake. Because the thing is, if they have, they will definitely react with horror. Like I've done it before. Sometimes you do. It's like you're explaining about what happened in the store. Sometimes you're just like not paying attention.
Sometimes you really don't see it. Yeah.
It's really confusing. And you're just like, you don't mean to, but you sort of go down the wrong way or whatever. Like when you realize or someone mentions it to you that you're like, you're like, oh my God. Like I'm like basically like running to the back of the line because it's like you have to really over egg your response so you look like you're not really a queue jumper. Yeah, it's a huge thing. It is a huge
Well, I got to get back there and see this in person because
Me too.
And maybe I'll act like the stupid American, be like, I didn't see the line. I'm so sorry. Just so I can see what people do.
I think they'd let you get away with it because they'd be like, oh, tourist.
Idiot. American idiot.
Or American idiot. Exactly. Well, that's it for this week. I
learned so much.
Yes, and I learned a lot about tipping. I love the fact I don't love that it goes back to slavery, but it's just another great example of something that goes back to slavery. It's very helpful for our like common threads. We will see you next Monday. Thank you for listening.
Bye.
Bye.